Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So, the politics. We finally come to the applications. And I'm going to start by talking about applications of the identifying problems with the standard political theory. And by I mean standard political theory, I don't necessarily buy the political theory that people accept without question, but it is the only example of Islamic political theory we have, because none other was developed. And how is that a dysfunction for today? So what I'm going to talk about is all examples of problems that we face today in real life, in real trials, and how those problems are a transplantation of the old thinking into today, and how changing that thinking would solve the problem. So we're not talking about theoretical issues, we're going to talk about real everyday life issues. And sometimes people can appreciate those problems if they have actually interacted with Islamic movements, contemporary Islamic movements, and how they think and what they want to do. And if you haven't interacted with them or haven't read their literature, you might not appreciate how big the problem is. Because while we are ruled with secular dictatorships, and Islam is always perceived or advertised as the solution, the word Islamic solution in the realm of politics means different things to different people. That's a problem. So, first of all, how do we choose a leader?
So, just to be completely clear, we are now going into using the proposed paradigm. We're going to go in and we're going to talk about how it fixes the dysfunction that we first started talking about on our very first session.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And it'll be done under 5 categories, right? Political, science, economical, history, and social.
Yes.
So now we're covering the political.
Yes. And in every one of those, I'm just going to pick examples. Obviously, every category of those needs volumes of research. But I'm just going to pick examples. I'm going to pick examples that I have seen to resonate deeply when people are trying to apply Islam in those categories, in contemporary attempts. Number one, how do we choose a leader? I mean, obviously we have a principle in the Quran that says, وَأَمْرُهُمْ شُورَى بَيْنَهُمْ. But how do we choose a leader? In the prevailing paradigm, leadership was early on, relatively, became a form of a king, and a king will give to his son, and so forth. And at some point, trouble happens in the kingdom, and somebody else takes power. It's as simple as that. So there is the issue of representation. The question is representation, or how do we choose a leader, is not developed in fiqh. For the most part, it's a fiqh of necessity, which means if someone became a leader, then we're just going to have to accept him. And that is as far, honestly, the issue of fiqh in this category is the least developed category of all. So how does that translate to today's, how does the concept translate to today's problems? Well, in this day and age, there are movements that are trying to overthrow the dictatorships and establish Islamic law. And the question that they can never answer, sometimes they answer it bluntly, but it's not the answer that you want to hear, or you should at least think about, is, are they going to impose Islamic law on you? Or is the population going to choose the Islamic system? So let's say there is an Islamic system that they have envisioned in their mind. And in their mind, that is Islam. That is the political application of Islam. That is the political structure of Islam. And they say, we're going to come and we're going to fight. And they're fighting against a dictatorship. Okay? And when they are in power, and this goes to all the groups in Syria and before that in Egypt and in other places. When we are fight, how are you going to establish the Islamic State in relation to the question of representation of leadership. Are you going to impose it on people, or are you going to allow people to choose? You will find the Islamic movements, and a lot of them, an alarming percentage of them, say that Islam is not subject to democracy. It's not something people choose. And then they cite you history and cite you, a hadith that says, for example, one of those hadiths that says, يعني, you push people to heaven under the shades of the blades of your swords. Yes. So again, that's the mentality. The issue of representation is not developed. The whole concept of representation is not developed because of the when we talked about how the paradigm began to establish, and there was this political aspect, and that's basically this transition from some form of representation during the Ahd al-Rashidi to basically a form of dictatorship with the Umayyad, and after that. And then there's the epistemological switch that started with considering the hadith as an independent source, and then there was basically it was sealed with the conflict between Mu'tazili and Ahl al-Hadith, and the political switch of al-Mutawakkil from those to those, and how this issue basically the other guys vanished, and these guys won, and the paradigm came of age and matured. So the first step was political. The first step in that conflict was purely political, and the political system changed. So Islamic literature is not developed in this category. Issue of representation is not developed, and go about and ask. I'm going to say you find at least 50% of the Islamic movements don't have the understanding that they have to leave it for people to decide. They justify that it shouldn't be left to people to decide by many justifications. One of them is a hadith. The other one is, well, people have been swayed away from Islam, or did not live an Islamic life for so long that they're not going to make the right decision, and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's all justifications that dictatorships use. So what I am saying is, the Islamic prevailing paradigm is going to bear Islamic movements that are of dictatorship nature, because the issue of representation is not solved. So is this a real problem? Yes, it is a real problem. Is the prevailing paradigm has a solution for this? In practice, it doesn't. In practice, it doesn't. They can justify the dictatorship approach that it's not up to the people to decide. I mean, we're going to impose, we're going to bring Islam to life, but it's not up to the people to decide. While you see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He's talking to people and to Muslims, He's talking to the whole population. He's talking to the Muslim community. He's not talking to the leadership of the community. He's not talking to the ruler. He's talking to the whole community. So so this is the problem, and this is the prevailing paradigm, and how is the new paradigm going to help? Where purely and simply the new paradigm is telling you that Quran is first. I don't accept hadith that contradicts the Quran. The hadith may be harmonious with the Quran, but the way you're using it is contradictory to the Quran. So I'm not going to accept your interpretation, purely and simply.
Can you define exactly what you were talking about in this point? What so everything you've said before, and we're in agreement with, and everything like that. But right now, what specific hadith are you saying that is contradicting the Quran that would solve this particular issue?
No, it's not would solve this. It would give them justification for imposing. And they cite many things, not necessarily hadith.
No, I understand that, but with the new paradigm, how can
any interpretation that contradicts with amruhum shura bainahum, I will refuse. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, amruhum shura bainahum. You're basically, if you want to give me a hadith that says that amruhum does not have to be shura bainahum,
just translate the verse.
Amruhum shura bainahum.
Yeah, just start with
again, politics is teamwork. Mm-hmm. It has to be based on a mutual opinion. Well, how do you? I mean, the details again are left, left to the people to decide. But I think 51% is a reasonable starting point. I mean, it's not a good starting point, but it's a reasonable starting point. It's definitely not the opinion of 5% or 3% or 1%, because at the end of the day, those movements that want to, we all want Islam to come back to our lives. We all want the dictatorships to end, but we don't want to substitute one dictatorship for another. Why? Because it's going to hurt Islam. Look what happened in Iran. Every Iranian, almost every single Iranian that I have seen, when they leave Iran, they have nothing to do with Islam. I mean, it's amazing. Just look at the Iranians outside Iran and inside Iran. And I'm not. I think the Shia system is even is greatly suppressive. But it's the concept. You're trying to impose something by force on people. It will backfire if it's not. So where is the representation again? Who is making the decision? Is there true representation?
I understand, and I want to agree, because that's what you feel needs to be done, simply by looking at the fact that so many have failed in the past, by trying to do it this way. But I don't know, like a part of me is not convinced, simply because of the fact that, well, Allah says that we have to use like shura in our politics, but he also gives us order on how to rule society, right? He says he gives us rules and guidelines.
But this is exactly the point. That's exactly what I'm talking about. He is not talking to the leadership. He's talking to the entire society. And when you understand the Quran and you give Quran priority, you have to understand whatever system you set up, if it's not a system that is based on representation of what the people want, then it's a system going to have internal contradictions and it's going to backfire. Purely and simply. So what you should focus on is, I'm not saying that it's okay to have dictatorships. Don't get me wrong. Nobody hates dictatorships as much as I do. But what I'm afraid of is just substituting one dictatorship for another. Like this whole dream about Islam, when it comes a reality, that we're disappointed. And there have been examples of that in Pakistan, in Iran, in other. Look at Pakistan. It was a dream, but it never materialized. Pakistan is still backward. So where is the solution? The same thing in Sudan. In Sudan, same problem. It was a dream. It never materialized. Where did it go? What you should do is focus on, obviously getting rid of dictatorship, having true representation, and then focus on education for the society.
I get it. I get it, and it's not that I disagree. Like what you're saying makes perfect sense. I just don't understand, or I feel like we need a better answer to the fact that, like, if you are a leader, and Allah has given command of the fact that you need to, like, this is Islamic law, this is what you need to do, like, this is how society should be, he doesn't say, should the people accept this is what you should do. Should the people accept that, that if you kill someone that you need to get killed, then do it. Like, if you get the majority of it. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying. What you are talking about is exercising the law, implementing the law.
Yeah.
But what I'm talking about is, you might want to say what I'm talking about is the Constitution.
Okay.
When you bring people together and you create a new system, there has to be agreement. What is the Constitution?
Right.
Now, within that Constitution, people agree that, if misconduct is A, B, and C, and the punishment is X, Y, and Z, then yeah, you should enforce it, obviously. Those who do misconduct will be punished, purely and simply. But if you have, I mean, let me give you an example. I mean, our society is scarred from colonialism. And, you know, remember when we talked about the different reactions to stress and, you know, and how somehow people are more westernized and people
Yes.
are more like it. So if you come to a society where, let's say, 30% is westernized and try to implement an Islamic system by force, you're going to shred the society into pieces.
I fully agree.
Yeah.
I fully agree.
So the issue, again, the question of representation. I'm not saying it's a hopeless case. I'm just saying it's not mature in the mind of the contemporary Islamic literature. Sure, you can cite me somebody there and somebody here, but what I'm talking about is the minds and hearts of Muslims and activists on the ground. How much of them are influenced by the old prevailing paradigm, Khalifa, and even in the, I mean, it's as silly as, you know, they circumvent the verse to the point that, you know, some people actually, in fiqh books, you open fiqh books, and you talk, and they tell you, shura is not obligatory. الشورى الملزمة والشورى غير الملزمة. I mean, this is again a form of nisakh. I mean, you call it what you want, but the bottom line is you're not exercising the principle. Say, oh, shura ma la mulzima. Shura is not obligatory. And shura is not obligatory because, oh, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq did not listen to the Sahaba when he decided to do the Hurub al-Raddi, for example. Umar was in opposition, and so shura is not mulzima. This is how the thinking process happened. Well, this is what? I mean, bounce it to the paradigm immediately. What Abu Bakr did and what Umar did is what? One word.
Yeah, sure.
History. It's part of history. It's not part of religion. It's part of history. You take part of history and you influence how you understand Quran. I mean, to me, it's a disaster. You know, we talked about the part of history in terms, but obviously when we talk about it, I can't remember all the examples, but this is an example I remember. When they talk about in Kitab al-Fiqh, Ash-Shura does not have to be obligatory. They cite the action of Abu Bakr.
But I kind of feel that they make a mistake just by saying that, simply because of the fact that, like, I guess you have to define shura. Like, shura doesn't, like, to me, doesn't necessarily mean that, okay, so we're all going to sit down, we're going to talk about it, and then we're going to vote, and then, you know, as the majority prevails. Shura means to sit down and talk about it and then come to a decision. Right?
You can put it in any, and that's what I was
like to me, Abu Bakr did shura. Like, it was
Oh,
obvious.
of course. Of course, I mean, the historical narrative is taken in the context against Shura. But chances are, if you dig deep into the history, you would realize that no, it's not really that. Or maybe he thought it was within his jurisdiction as a leader, but doesn't mean that jurisdiction is infinite. Yeah. So it's a weak argument.
And just the fact that Umar had a say in it, you know, and then Abu Bakr disagreed, it means that Shura was done.
Yes. But my issue is to get out completely of that quagmire. To me, all of that is quagmire, because we can debate this until dawn. But to me, that's quagmire. What I'm trying to say is, create a new paradigm. Guys, this is not Islam. The message stops when the messenger died. That's history. You could use history to your benefit, but don't tell me history is religion. I mean, that is an unsubstantiated claim.
But
again, it's an epistemologic decision.
But again,
I choose to history begins with the death of the Prophet ﷺ, and the message ends with the death of the Prophet ﷺ. It's an epistemologic choice.
And I get it, and we've touched upon this before, but it's you still can't deny the fact that like someone like Abu Bakr, who is his best friend, who everything we know about him is him trying to do his best to
I'm not denying that.
You know, the decisions that he makes, you know.
What I am saying is
he has an understanding that we may not have, because he was right there with him when he made these decisions, right? So I'm not talking about this particular case. I'm talking about in general.
Yes.
You know, when people say, that, well, Abu Bakr did this, or Umar did
You
this.
see, the funny thing about it is it's not about Abu Bakr and Umar. It's about what people try to represent Abu Bakr in and represent Umar in. They try to represent them. If their argument wants to lean more toward dictatorship, they try to interpret the historic events in a dictatorship flavor. But if you actually had the capacity to go back to that reality, it may not be that. It may be completely different.
Sure, and I completely agree with
Yeah.
that. All I'm saying is, yes, when the Prophet ﷺ passed away, the message ended, right? But you can't put aside everything that happens after, because what happens after it is like a practical application and understanding.
That's exactly what it is. We are in 100% agreement. It's a practical application by human beings.
Yes.
Which means you can benefit from it, but epistemologically, it's not a source of religion.
Right.
You can bet it's an example of religion. I 100% agree. It's an example.
Theoretically,
Yeah.
if everything has been brought to us, correctly, it is the best possible example that you can have, because it is done by the people who are
Yes.
with him.
As long as you take it in context.
Of
Again,
course.
I mean, the Abu Bakr Siddiq was pro the theory of Qurayshiyya in its very primitive form, which is al-Muhajirin should be the rulers.
Right.
I mean, in that context, it was acceptable. But to say that that is part of the religion,
Agreed.
again, in context.
Agreed.
So that's about of course, the question of representation also has to encompass the issue of Qurayshiyya. And the issue of Qurayshiyya, I mean, this is when you find some real resistance.
Yeah. Can you state the issue of
The issue of
Quraysh?
Qurayshiyya is the leader should be from the tribe of the Prophet ﷺ. And they have several hadiths that cite that. And of course Abu Bakr Siddiq started this. He didn't start it with recitation hadith. He started because he thought it was the right thing to do for the time and place that he was in. It was a tribal community, tribal society, and guess what? Politics were tribal. I mean, how surprising is that? And he was telling him politics are tribal.
Isn't it weird though? Because I mean, Islam was supposed to come in and get rid of this entire notion of tribalism, right?
Yes.
So
but
why
that takes
revert
time.
to it, right?
That takes time, and this is a prime example of what I'm talking to you about. That this is history. So let's say if Islam was realistically going to be applied, let's just say 70% in the realm of politics. Is that 70% our ceiling? Does that become our ceiling? So every generation is less and less, has less and less, and the Islamic political message is lost. Like it is lost. Or do you go back to the source? That's where the paradigm helps you. History is history. History is not the source. Mm-hmm. History is an example that you can debate. Why? Because these people are not ma'sumin. Everybody agrees that they're not ma'sumin. Everyone wants
means that they're not flawless.
Exactly. There's only one ma'soom, there's the Prophet ﷺ, and in the matters of the message, not an open-ended.
Yeah.
So that's the issue of representation. A very big problem in this day and age. Every single, I mean, I shouldn't say every, but at least a lot of the Islamic movements are basically a mini dictatorships that are brewing. And to me, again, the catastrophe of this is not about the fact that we are misunderstanding. It's about the fact that then when this dream of the masses comes true, it turns out to be a hollow dream, because the reality of the dream is disappointing. They're just like a dictator, like the next guy. They may be good for a while, but then eventually, without representation, without the feedback, guess what? They're going to be excessive, and their performance is going to decline. And they're going to, as they accumulate errors, they're going to become even more defensive, and they're going to become even more dictators. It's human nature. So, issue of representation. Now, on the other end, I've criticized all these people that want to get into power. but they don't necessarily have a mature understanding of power. On the other end, people that support the existing power. You have a lot of those in Islam too. You have people that, for example, I'll give you an example, is the demonstrations in Egypt. Al-Azhar, which is the official university of Cairo in Islam, which is a very, very, very important Islamic source of knowledge in the Muslim world, says that you cannot demonstrate against the leader. I mean, it's a bold statement as that. Or when you open the fiqh books about the leader, it's honestly, wallahi al-azim, if you don't want to get upset, don't open it. But it's honestly a manual for dictatorship. Oh, he can do this with the money. He can do that with the people. He can do this, he can do that. Now, where's the checks and balances? Zip. Nada. Nothing. Why? Because it's not developed. It's the whole fiqh was developed under the dictatorship.
But well, exactly, right? Like I don't think this is a criticism of the old paradigm. This is just the fact that you're citing scholars that have been purchased by the government, and are told to write these, that should not be worth anything to anyone.
You would think. But when people say, oh, what is al-hukm al-shar'i fi al-muzaharat? What is the Islamic ruling in demonstrations? Don't demonstrate.
I know, but nobody, took that seriously.
Nobody took that seriously because it's an expired narrative. But for ages, it was very effective in Egypt. And to this day, it is very effective in the Gulf. To this day, it is very effective in places like Saudi Arabia.
But do you think that people actually believe that, or do they make the distinction between...
It's hard to probe. I mean, I can't say. I'm going to say that a significant portion believes in that. Do you know why? I'll give you a very simple example. Because I did. Before this whole thing. I honestly did. All this BS that they're talking about, I did. I was there. And I was not alone. So the first problem that I was talking about is the problem of representation, and versus dictatorship. Second problem I'm talking about is the problem that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says sunnat al-tadafu'. Tadafu'. كذلك يضرب الله الحق والباطل. This is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala strikes righteousness with unrighteousness. So the good thing will prevail and the bad thing will go away. But there has to be what? There has to be collision between what's good and what's bad. So social reform is going forward. Also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَلَوْلَا دَفْعُ اللَّهِ النَّاسَ بَعْضَهُمْ بِبَعْضٍ لَهُدِّمَتْ صَوَامِعُ وَبِيَعٌ وَصَلَوَاتٌ وَمَسَاجِدٌ. If it wasn't for Allah pushing people against people, if it wasn't for that action pushing people against people, very bad things would happen. Like there's no mechanism for correction. That's exactly what he's talking about. So the question is, maybe I don't have, because of the first problem, I don't have a good idea how to build a good system. But there's another problem. How do I change a bad system? Where's the starting point? Like every element of tadafu', every element of opportunity for change is counter-argued with a hadith that says hadith al-ta'a. No, you should have ta'a. No, you shouldn't do this. No, you shouldn't do that.
And obey.
Exactly. Even if he does this, even if he does that. I mean, one hadith in Muslim says, وَلَوْ ضَرَبَ ظَهْرَكَ وَأَكَلَ مَالَكَ. Even if he strikes your back and takes your money. Okay, now the apologists come and say, oh, this means this and this means that. ضَرَبَ ظَهْرَك means it's a had because you drank khamr. And أَخَذَ مَالَك because you didn't pay zakat. Okay, maybe this is an explanation, but how abusable can this be? Are they going to be really that, when the Sultan is sitting on his throne and he wants to crush the resistance and he brings those fuqaha, cite the hadith of ta'a. Are they going to really tell him, oh, this is not really about this, it's unrealistic. I mean, the whole thing needs to So, there is no clear answer in Islamic fiqh how to incite meaningful change. And I'll give you an example. Because people always say, oh, you're being, excessive. I'll give you an example. Most Islamic fiqh says, unless the ruler does something that clearly, unequivocally declare that he is kafir, like he comes out, أنا كافر والعياذ بالله. Unless he says that or does something that is clearly signifies he's kafir, then he should you shouldn't try to get him out of power. So he could be corrupt. He could be sleeping with 500 women. He could be stealing 99% of the wealth. He could be imprisoning 10% of the population. He could be killing God knows untold number of people. He could be doing this, he could be doing that. But as long as he's doing what? يقيم الصلاة. Allahu Akbar. He goes to Eid like the jokers of the Middle East. The jokers of the Middle East, they kill half of the population, and during Eid they say Allahu Akbar. The same thing all over the Middle East. This is what fiqh says. Fiqh says there is no solution for the ruler who is unjust. And you can expand the word unjust as much as you want. As long as he's what? As long as إلا أن نرى منه كفرا بواح لنا فيه من الله برهان. I mean, it's like a cliche. Unless he commits vivid kufr, that we have a proof that we can in front of Allah. Because if you say no to the if you criticize the ruler, you're going to be dumped in the hellfire. I'm telling you. So total collapse of how to address dysfunction, political dysfunction in the world. It's all about doing this. That's the old paradigm. It's loaded with that. How does the new paradigm happen? How does the new paradigm tell you? The new paradigm tell you, please, follow the principle. I'm not going to accept, you know what? Even if this hadith says, ضرب ظهرك وأكل مالك, even if you have a true justification for it, اسمهما أكبر من نفعهما. I'm going to use Islamic terminology. It's the potential for abuse far succeeds the benefit. What is the benefit? Oh, you're going to tell me the benefit is, if you commit zina, he's going to whip you? Well, I know that already. I mean, I don't need the hadith to tell me that he's going to whip me. But even though the hadith doesn't say that, I just say in general. And he's telling me if I don't pay zakah, he's going to come and take my money. Okay, I don't need that hadith. What is the benefit? I mean, but the potential for abuse is off the scale. And they use it. Don't think they do. They use it. طاعة ولي الأمر. And they always say like, this deep voice, to all of that. This is it. Islamic politics is juvenile, to say the least. It's nothing. We don't have anything. It needs to be you need to dump 1,400 years of history in the trash can and start from scratch. Get the Quran and start from scratch. Politics, it's you have to be decisive when it comes to politics because we don't have anything. Not every category is that deficient, but this category is like, hopeless. I mean, you literally have to wipe the slate clean. And then I think those are two main important. Obviously, there are some other important points about this issue, but those are the two. And then there's another problem. It sort of goes back to the first question I said. Well, what is the Torah say? Everybody wants to bring Khilafah back, and everybody resonates this in conferences and in books and in lectures and Khilafah and Khilafah and Khilafah, and nobody knows what Khilafah is. It's a symbol. Khilafah is not about the political system that existed. Yes, we were on top of the world during the time of the Umayyad. Yes, we had a vast state that was number one and next to none. Yes, but is that really the ideal system that we want, where there's Khalifa that sits down until he's dead, and he gives to his son or to his brother or whatnot? Is that what we want? So what is Khilafah? Before you tell me, we're going to strive for Khilafah, what is Khilafah? You have to define Khilafah for me. Is Khilafah a system that that is going to bring justice to the population, is a system that is going to abide by the principles, political principles that the Quran talks about. وَأَمْرُهُمْ شُورَى بَيْنَهُم. And there's other verses in the Quran. It's not just that. I mean, don't think it's that deficient. For example, Prophet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, just listen to this verse. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَوْ كُنْتَ غَلِيظًا وَلَوْ كُنْتَ غَلِيظًا وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَظًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَنْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. If you were basically had bad manners and you were intolerable, they would walk away from you. It's about politics. Did he say, oh no, you're going to bring him back with the whip? Oh, with the sword? Or in our day and age with the gun? Or in the literature of the Islamic movements, you either follow us in the word of Allah, or you're going to go to prison, or you're going to get killed. Some of them actually say that. Some of them actually say, and this is a political party in Egypt, that if they get to power, they're going to start an expansion military campaign, to reunify the Muslim world. And I say, oh my God! I mean, you're gonna launch war at what? At other Muslims? Instead of trying to make political change that people with representation that people willingly want to unite, you want to launch war like Saddam Hussein when he went to Kuwait because he wanted to liberate Masjid al-Aqsa. I mean, what kind of nonsense is this? This is the Islamic literature. Oh, because why do you... Okay, you asked them, the guy who's interviewing this guy, he asked them, well, why do you want to do this? Oh, because this is what Umar did. This is what Osman did. This is what Salah ad-Din did. They are hostage to the old paradigm. And the old paradigm has no room for representation. None. Is it? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. He's basically telling him, if you had bad manner and bad conduct and you were intolerable, they're just going to walk away. Your political unity is going to disintegrate. Well, if that